Today, on Turning Grief into Growth, 3 signs that you are not processing your grief, and one very simple thing you can do to change that right now. That's coming right up. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Turning Grief into Growth. I'm Jennifer Santiago, yoga teacher, resilience expert, and grief coach, and trauma survivor. And I got this idea to talk about ways that we know that we are not processing our grief and something that we can do about it because of not just my own experience, but observing others. And specifically, just last weekend, I had a grief circle. It was a 1-hour connection with each other. We were in community. We were talking about our losses. And then 1 hour later, we head outside. It was a beautiful day. We were out in nature and we were hanging out with the donkeys at the Sassy Ass Donkey Retirement Farm in Hillsborough, Virginia. And I'm going to explain in a second why those two things together, which sound like they're very different things, like talking about grief and petting donkeys, seem like, how in the world does that work? But it will make sense to you. But first, I'm going to talk about 3 signs that you are not processing your grief. And it's something that you can not just look out for in yourself, but in others if you're trying to help others. And this came up over the weekend with my grief circle. So we had one gentleman, for example, who had lost his wife very tragically, terrible cancer. And it happened about a year ago. And during the grief circle, he was very, very emotional. And he even blurted it out and said, I don't think that I've been handling my grief. I don't think that I've actually been thinking about the loss. So how can you tell if someone that you are trying to support isn't processing their grief? Here's number 1, and that is overfunctioning. So this is something that the gentleman had mentioned, very successful business person. He said, I threw myself into my work. When you see someone that's doing a little bit too well, that is completely over functioning in their work or in some aspect of their life, that might be a good sign that they are not processing their grief. An example, if you're a parent to look out for, you have 2 kids. One is crying every day because they lost someone that they love. Usually it's going to be the other parent. The other one, I'm fine, mom. I'm fine, dad. I'm doing okay. Doesn't want to talk about it. That's an example of overfunctioning, and the child that you should be worried about is not the one that's crying every day, but the other one that doesn't seem to be processing their grief. Number 2, compulsive behavior. This is an easy one to spot. Any sort of addiction, usually alcohol. I know me as an example, and I always like to talk about my personal experience with grief because I think it's helpful. I'm not going to lie, after Felipe passed away, he was my fiance 10 years ago, I drank way too much. I found myself after work having a completely functional day, coming home, grabbing a bottle of wine, and chugging the entire thing. Luckily, I have since subsided from that kind of drinking. Luckily, it didn't elevate to an addiction, but it can very easily. So if you are indulging in compulsive behavior, that could be a sign that you are not processing your grief. It's not just alcohol. It's not just addictive behaviors that are the traditional ones, but it could be something as simple as doom scrolling, like you're on your phone 24/7 when you can be, or something along the lines of just numbing yourself with Netflix. You're just watching show after show after show, doing anything but thinking about your grief. Those are signs that you may not be processing your grief. Number 3, and this is a doozy, this is one we can't compromise on, sleep issues. Now, in the immediate aftermath of a loss, okay, most of us don't sleep very well, but that could become a problem. I think we all know by now that the pillars, like the holy trinity of health, is sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And sleep might be number 1. It might be at the tip of that triangle. So if you're having sleep issues, maybe you're not processing your grief, and maybe it's time to start trying something new. All right, now let me offer, after talking about the 3 ways that you can tell that someone or yourself is not processing grief, here's what you can start to do to make sure that you are. And it comes from a theory, the Pendulum Theory, that was established in the 1990s. The psychiatrists were called Margaret Stroebe and Schut. I had to look that up. I've got my little cheat sheet right here next to me. But they came from a background in grief and trauma therapy, and they came up with the concept of going back and forth, that is sort of the healthiest way to process emotions. So back and forth between going fully into your grief and then swinging out like a pendulum. So you're taking in your grief, your emotions in small doses, and then you're swinging right back out. And what that's doing is it's allowing your body to go fully into the grief to process it, but then only doing it in safe doses and then coming back out and distracting yourself, which can be okay. As long as you process your grief, you can, of course, you don't want to go 24/7 into your grief. No one could withstand that. But you can come in and out in ways that are comfortable for you, but and also in ways that don't ignore your grief, that don't allow you to indulge in distractions. So how does this relate to what I was saying earlier about the donkeys? All right. Well, why an animal connection? Well, number one, we're out in nature, and being out in nature, being outside, that has a lot of health benefits, right? Everyone knows that. But number two, we're in a community. Number three, we're with these stoic, sweet animals. I mean, donkeys have a little bit of like a lapdog personality. They're very sweet. And so, I know they're very funny, right? So what we're doing is we are going fully into our grief in a grief circle. We are talking about our losses. We are talking about our feelings. We are talking about the terrible facts sometimes that led up to the death of a loved one, especially like I had mentioned earlier with this gentleman's wife who died from, a terrible cancer, really aggressive cancer. Like that sucks. It hurts and the loss is real and it's painful. But after we spend all that time talking about it and really feeling the grief in our body, we go outside, we give ourselves a break. And just like that pendulum, we're in the grief and then we're out of the grief. And we're with these donkeys and they're funny, they're braying, they're like fighting over food. And we're just allowing ourselves a little bit of levity, a little bit of joy. Sometimes when you're grieving, too much joy feels shameful, right? But this is just a little bit in a safe environment with people who you know are also suffering. So you're looking at the person next to you who just told you their horrible story about grief and you see them smile. And that makes you think, well, if they can do it, I can too. Why should I feel shame right now for feeling some joy? So that's the point of the grief circle. That's the point of doing the 1 hour of the hard work and then the 1 hour of light animal connection. It is completely in line with this pendulum theory of allowing ourselves to feel our grief in safe doses and swinging right back out to re-regulate our nervous system. I gotta be honest. So, I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a psychologist. I didn't even know about this pendulum theory until I started to do some research. I knew instinctively that this made sense because once I started to healthfully process my own grief, this is exactly what I was doing instinctually. Now, not all of us have the ability to go to a grief circle where there's a donkey around, right? So what could this look like for you at home if you are dealing with grief or trauma and you can't go to a farm? Well, you can in the link in my bio if you can join us, by the way, in Northern Virginia, if you're around and come to a farm. There's going to be another grief circle in December, so stay tuned for that. I actually thought it was going to be my last grief circle, my last one for the year, because the holidays, but then I realized the holidays are really hard for people who are grieving, so let's just try to do one more. So there will be another grief circle with the animal connection with donkeys. However, you can't come and you obviously don't have access to a donkey. What do? Well, you find something that brings you joy. I know this could be hard when you're grieving, but before your loss, there was something besides your loved one that brought you joy. What was that? Define it and allow yourself to indulge in it. Was it a walk in nature? What was it? Hanging out with your dog? Was it hanging out with a specific friend? Was it going to a specific restaurant? Whatever it is, define what gave you joy independent of your loved one prior and give yourself permission to indulge now. Also, what I'd like you to do, however, again, this is a pendulum, right? So we're doing joy, but we're also doing grief. We are not ignoring our grief. So set a timer. How much can you stand? How much can you stand in a day to go fully into your grief? What is that Rumi saying? The only way through the pain is the pain. How much pain can you tolerate? Set a time, go into it. Maybe it's 10 minutes. Sit and think about your loved one. Think about how you miss them. Think about what life would be like with them. I know this sounds difficult, right? You're doing it anyway if you're grieving. So go fully into it. Think about them. Spend that time. And when it becomes too heavy, you swing right back out and then you go to your healthy distraction, not your unhealthy distraction. As I had mentioned earlier, you don't want to be compulsive and you don't want to indulge in addictive behaviors. You want to give yourself a healthy distraction and then go right back into the grief. So there you have it. 3 signs that either you or someone you love is not processing their grief, and something that you can do about it. Think about that pendulum back and forth in the grief and right back out, in the grief and right back out. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Turning Grief into Growth. I offer tips on this YouTube channel and also on my Instagram at Grief into Growth. As I had mentioned, I will have another grief circle with our lovely donkeys, including my favorite, Finnegan. Oh my God, I love Finnegan. He's the funniest of all of them. He is the donkey that brings me joy. So if you want to join us, and if you're in Northern Virginia or nearby, look out for our dates. I believe we'll do December 16th, whatever that Sunday is, but look out. In my Instagram, you can check out the link in my bio and follow me there, and I'll have all the information there. But till next time.